The snow came sideways, sharp and restless, sweeping through the cottonwood trees like it had a mind of its own. It erased tracks, softened hills, and made the world feel empty and far away. In that moving white silence walked a woman alone. Her skirt was dark with soot. Her boots were torn and stiff. Her shoulders were thin under a worn shawl that no longer held warmth. But she kept walking one step after another as if stopping would mean she vanished completely. Her name was Marbell Jameson. She had been walking since before sunrise, passing wagons that never slowed and homes that shut their doors when they saw her coming. The cold cut into her face, but she did not flinch. Cold was honest. It did not pretend to care. What had broken her was not the winter. It was the long nights when no one spoke her name. Nights when the fire was gone, the house was gone, and even the small grave she should have had did not exist. By the time she reached the edge of town, the church bell rang for evening prayer. The sound rolled over the rooftops like a warning. Smoke rose from chimneys, but no one stood outside. This was not a town that welcomed strangers after dark. Marbell tightened her shawl and stepped into the frozen ruts of the road. Two boys playing near a porch looked up, saw her blackened skirt and wind-burned face, and ran inside without a word. A dog barked once, then hid. She felt invisible and exposed at the same time. At the general store, she paused before opening the door. She already knew the answer, but hope was a stubborn thing. Inside, warmth rushed over her skin. The smell of flour and old wood filled the air. A potbelly stove glowed in the corner. Mrs. Best Melly Tibet stood behind the counter counting matches. She did not look up. Marbell cleared her throat. She said she could sweep, fold cloth, or just sit by the stove until the snow eased. Mrs. Tremor Tibet finally looked up. Her eyes were sharp and tired. She said she remembered Marbell, Jameson's wife, from the ridge near Stony Ford. She said she heard the house burn down. She heard the baby was lost too. Marbell said nothing. Mrs. Tibet shrugged and said, "Fire comes when it wants." Then she went back to her matches. Marbell turned and walked out into the cold again. The church door was locked. She leaned against the rail, her hands numb, her breath thin. The bell tower loomed above her, dark against the snow. She did not cry. She had run out of tears long ago. She stood still and let the cold take what it wanted. Then she heard footsteps, soft, uneven. She turned. Two little girls stood near the edge of the square, barefoot, coats too thin, tangled hair. They stared at her without fear. One held a wooden button. The other clutched a broken locket on a string. The louder one asked if she was hungry. Mael blinked. She said she did not have a porch. The girl nodded like that made sense. The quieter twin reached out and touched the hem of Marbell's skirt. Her fingers came back black with soot. The louder one asked what it was. Marbell said it was from a fire. The quiet twin hugged her without warning. Small arms, fierce grip, like she already knew something grown people had forgotten. The louder girl said they needed a bride for their father. Marbell felt the words hit her harder than the cold. She said she only wanted a place to be still. The girl nodded and said, that was close enough. They took her hand and led her away from the church, down a narrow lane lined with trees heavy with snow, past a leaning fence, past a barn that had seen better years, toward a small house with light in the windows and smoke curling from the chimney. The porch sagged, the chair rocked in the wind, but the light was warm. Inside, the smell of stew wrapped around her like something she had almost forgotten. The girls ran ahead, shouting that they brought a bride. A man stood up from a bench near the fire. Tall, broad, quiet. A scar crossed his brow. He looked at Marbell without suspicion, without welcome, just seeing her. He pointed to a chair by the hearth. She sat. The heat sank into her bones and burned in a way that felt holy. He set a bowl of stew beside her and walked away. Later, when the girls slept tangled together, Marbell stood to leave. The man stopped her at the door and asked if she had somewhere better. She did not. He told her to stay until she did. She slept in a small room that smelled of cedar and soap. Someone had thought ahead. She did not sleep much, but she listened to the house, to the quiet breathing of children, to the soft sound of a man shaping wood in the dark. In the morning, her boots were cleaned. The ash was gone. She sat on the porch while the girls chased chickens. The man stepped out and said he would fetch wood. He asked if she knew how to make bread. She said she did once. He said she could teach the girls if she was staying. She asked his name, Colt. He did not ask for hers. And for the first time since the fire, Marbell did not feel like a ghost passing through someone else's life. Morning came slow to the little house near the cottonwoods. Frost clung to the window edges and pale light spilled across the wooden floor like something careful not to wake anyone. Marbell rose before the sun, her body stiff but her chest lighter than it had been in months. The cold in the room was sharp, honest. It reminded her she was still alive. She stepped into the main room and found Colt already awake. He stood by the stove heating water, his back straight, his movements quiet and sure. He did not speak. He only set a tin cup of coffee beside her. It was bitter and hot. She drank it slowly, letting the warmth spread. The twins shuffled in soon after, hair wild, eyes heavy with sleep. Josie climbed onto the bench and tucked her feet beneath her. June brushed her sister's hair with a bone comb, careful in a way that surprised Marbell. Colt pulled on his coat, took his axe, and stepped outside without a word. The door closed behind him like a sentence left unfinished. Marbell cleaned the cups and warmed leftover stew. The girls watched her closely as if she might vanish if they looked away too long. June asked if she knew how to braid hair. Marbell said yes. The girl sat between her knees and she worked through the knots with slow fingers, telling small, soft stories she did not remember learning. And the girls laughed. Josie leaned back into her like it was the safest place in the world. When Colt returned, he paused in the doorway. Marbell felt his eyes on her back but did not turn. Later, she found her boots by the hearth oiled and stitched where the leather had split. He had not asked if she planned to stay. He was already acting as if she might. That evening, she offered to cook. The stew was thin and a little too salty, but the girls ate every bite. Colt ate in silence. Afterward, Marbell noticed an apron hanging on a hook near the pantry, old, soft, once white. She did not touch it. She used a towel instead. That night, the girls woke crying. Nightmares. Josie clung to Marbell's neck, her body shaking. June pressed close, tears soaking Marbell's sleeve. Colt stood helpless in the doorway. Marbell sat with them, rocking, humming a tune with no words. They fell asleep against her. She did not move until morning. Days passed, not fast, not slow, just steady. Marbell learned the rhythm of the house. When the stove needed tending, which board creaked on the porch, how Colt spoke little, but noticed everything. He did not ask her to stay. He did not ask her to leave. She baked bread one morning. It split and browned too fast, but the girls tore it apart with joy. Colt ate a piece and nodded once. It felt like praise. One afternoon, June asked if they could call her mama. The word hit Marbell like a sudden fall. Colt looked up sharp. Josie only said Marbell smelled like home. Marbell told them maybe just Marbell for now. They accepted it easily. Later that week, she rode into town with Colt. They spoke little. The silence was not heavy, just unfinished. At the general store, Mrs. Tibbet saw them together and smiled the way sour things do. She said it was quick, wasn't it? Colt said nothing. That silence hurt more than the words. That night, Marbell sat on the porch while the fire crackled inside. Colt joined her. He said he should have answered the woman. He said he did not think it mattered. Marbell told him it did. He listened. The next morning, he said her name out loud for the first time. Marbell. It settled into her like something earned. Spring crept in slow. Snow melted into mud. Wagons returned. So did voices. Gossip moved faster than the thaw. In town, Marbell heard whispers that she was pretending. That she was warming a man's house without a ring. That children needed truth. She kept her chin up. She brought flour home. She brushed the girls' hair. She mended shirts. Still the words followed her like smoke. One morning, the twins fought in town. A boy said Marbell was not their mother. June pushed him. Josie bit him. By evening, the sheriff came riding up. He spoke to Colt on the porch. He said folks were uneasy. He said children needed a woman with a proper place. Marbell folded a blanket and listened. Colt said little. The sheriff rode away. That night, Josie asked if they were bad. Marbell told her no. She said she was not their mother, but she was here and she wanted to be. Josie cried anyway. Later, Marbell stood on the porch with Colt. She asked him what she was there. He told her what she did. He did not name her place. She asked if he would ever ask her to stay. He asked if she would say yes. She said not yet. She said she needed to remember who she was first. He accepted that. A storm came without warning. Wind howled. Snow fell thick and wet. The twins ran for the barn. Josie lost a carving by the creek and went looking for it. Marbell went after her despite the cold biting deep. She found Josie huddled behind a rock, shaking, crying over the lost wooden bird. Marbell pulled her close and told her she mattered more than any carving. She carried her home through the storm, legs burning, breath thin. Colt opened the door before they reached it. He took Josie into his arms and looked at Marbell like she had brought back something sacred. That night, by the fire, Colt told her the bird was the first thing he had made since his wife died. Marbell told him she never got to bury what she lost. Only ash remained. He listened. He showed her a small box. Inside were names the girls had written, trying to spell hers. Crooked letters, backward shapes, but hers. Marbell placed her burned wedding ring on the mantle. She said she had been someone else once. Colt asked who she was now. She said she did not know, but she thought the girls did. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside the fire burned steady, and though the town watched and whispered, something in that house had already begun to take root, quiet and stubborn, like a promise no storm could easily erase. Spring opened the land the way a wound slowly learns to heal. Mud clung to boots, fence posts leaned. The air smelled of wet earth and new grass. With the thaw came people. Wagons rolled again. Doors opened and tongues loosened. Marbell felt it in town before she heard it spoken. Eyes lingered too long. Smiles tightened. Her name moved from mouth to mouth like something being tested for weakness. She did not stop going. She bought flour and needles. She stood straight. She came home. One afternoon, 3 men rode up to the gate. Their horses were strong. Their faces were not kind. At the front was Hiram Blass, a neighbor who had always measured others by what he could take from them. Colt was chopping wood when they arrived. Marbell was shaking out a quilt on the porch. The twins were inside threading buttons onto string. Hiram tipped his hat and smiled thin. He said the town was uneasy. He said it did not look right. A woman living in a man's house without a name to back it. He said children needed order. He said land disputes had a way of returning when folks stopped acting proper. Colt stood still, axe resting in the stump. He said nothing. Marbell stepped down from the porch. Her voice did not shake. She said she had earned her place with work and care. She said she had knelt in mud to find a child in a storm. She said names written on paper had never kept anyone warm at night. Hiram laughed once and said the town would be watching. After they left, Marbell's knees gave out, not from fear, but from the weight of standing up after so long bent low. Colt said nothing then, but that night, when the girls were asleep, he sat across from her at the table. He said they would come again. She said she was tired of running from people who had never built anything worth defending. She laid her burned marriage paper on the table. She said she had lost more than a husband and a child. She had lost the name that made her real in the eyes of others. Colt took down his late wife's apron from the hook. He held it out to Marbell, not like a memory, but like a choice. He said the house needed a woman who stayed when it got hard. Marbell tied the apron around her waist. The cloth fit like it had been waiting. The next morning, the twins placed 2 wooden birds on the porch rail. One was chipped, one had a crooked wing. June said they were for luck. Josie said they were for staying. Word spread faster than spring rain. Some said Colt planned to marry her. Some said he would not. Some said she was clever. Others said she was trouble. Then the sheriff came again. This time he did not bring warnings. He brought papers. He said a hearing had been called. The town wanted answers. Marbell went pale, but she did not hide. On the day of the hearing, the church filled fast. Benches creaked, murmurs rose and fell. Marbell stood beside Colt at the front. The twins sat behind them, feet swinging, hands locked tight together. Mrs. Tactabet spoke first. She said Marbell had no claim, no ring, no blood, no record. She said children needed certainty. Others followed, some kind, some cruel, some afraid of change they could not name. When it was Marbell's turn, the room went quiet. She did not speak long. She said she had nothing left to lose, but the place she had built with her hands and heart. She said a home was not walls or paper, but the people who chose to stay when storms came. Colt spoke. Then his voice was steady and plain. He said Marbell was his choice. He said the girls chose her every morning. He said if the town could not see that, then the fault was not hers. Silence followed, heavy waiting. The sheriff cleared his throat. He said there was no law against what they had done. He said kindness was not a crime. He said the matter was closed. The room did not cheer. It did not need to. Some faces softened, others hardened, but the door was open. That night, Colt and Marbell sat on the porch while the girls slept. The air was warm for the first time. Frogs called from the creek. Colt said he had a ring now. Not a fine one, just honest metal. He said he would ask properly if she wished. Marbell looked out at the dark fields. She thought of Ash in silence and walking alone through snow. She thought of small arms hugging her waist. She thought of a name spoken out loud. She said yes. They married quiet. No crowd, just the girls, the creek, and a sky wide enough to hold forgiveness. June dropped buttons instead of flowers. Josie cried and laughed at the same time. Marble took the name McCrae, but she kept her own, too. She did not bury who she had been. She carried her forward. Years later, people would say the house near the cottonwoods was the warmest place in winter. They would say the twins grew strong and kind. They would say the woman who arrived with soot on her skirt became the heart of the place. But Marble knew the truth. She had not been saved. She had been chosen, and she chose back.